Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com with one more video on Clojure. So while this may be the final video in this series of 101 for Clojure, it doesn't necessarily mean we've covered absolutely everything in Clojure. So our final topic is going to be like loops, or basically iteration. And beyond this, there's recursion, there is exception handling, and there's all sorts of functions and libraries and all sorts of other cool stuff you can learn in Clojure. Now, since this is a functional programming language, you don't have to worry about like classes and things like that. So it's really just mastering functions and iteration and creating expressions and then using that to do whatever you need to do with the data you have to create the result that you want. Okay, so um, that's the great thing about functional programming. You don't have to worry about that extra stuff. But that means you have less tools to solve your problem. But the idea is that you have more predictability with the tools you have. So again, it's just a different mindset. Now, in this case, we're going to go over these four ways of course, sort of creating a loop or a sequence. So in this case, this first one's called dot times, which just basically means, so basically the way this reads is that we're going to have a variable called I, and we're going to loop through the expression 3 times. Okay, so now let's run that so we can see what the result is. Okay, we'll come back to where that error is in a second. Okay, but the first one, okay, so run through 0, 1, 2. So basically it's going to create a range. So when we say that, we're going to do it 3 times, but it's automatically going to start with 0 because that's how programming works. So it prints 0, 1, 2. Okay, it runs through the loop 3 times, starting with 0. So first time I is 0, second time I is 1, third time I is 2. So unlike for loops in other programming languages, you don't have to explicitly say that I is 0 to begin with. You just have to know whatever you put this on there, it's going to start with 0 and go up to but not including that number. That's the way to think about it. Is say loop this time starting with 0 up to but not including this number. So 0, 1, 2. And in this case, it's just printing I. And since I is always going to take the variable that it's running through, first time 0, second time 1, second time 2. This does the same thing, except instead of me just saying 3, what I'm using this function here, which the range function, what it does, it just creates literally a vector or list or whatever up to 3. So it means 0, 1, 2. So I'm saying, okay, every time this iterates, and you're going to iterate for 0, 1, 2, a range up to 3. And then again, it just prints n. So literally the same thing, 0, 1, 2, just again, different work. You're starting it with saying do sequence instead of do times. Okay, so and then yeah, that's it. So you end up in the same result, just slightly different syntax. But the cool thing about do sequence is that you can make it more complicated and actually have multiple things you're testing for. So let's take a look at how this one breaks down. So in this case, instead of just having one variable, here we're creating 2 variables. So we have first variable, we're going to call it letter, and it's going to iterate over this vector here, which is A and B. Okay, so it's going to do a loop once for A and do a loop for B. But since I'm naming a second variable called number, and that represents a range up to 3, so 0, 1, 2, what it's going to do is at first it's going to loop for A and do the range 3 times. So A0, A1, A2, A0, A1, A2, and then it's going to go do B, B0, B1, B2, which we see right here. Okay, so you can do that and it'll iterate instead of having to create nested for loops in other languages. You can just sit there and just keep naming more variable, item pairs. So that's actually really cool. Okay, and then so basically it says iterate over this, and the only thing that's in the loop is here, printing letter and number. Okay, now let's take a look at what happened with this loop, because it threw me an error. This is your for loop. Okay, I see part of the reason why. And of course, this thing disconnects on me. So we'll give that a minute to reconnect. Hey everybody, so I guess my internet's having an issue, so I'm just going to show it to you from here. So basically the for, the way it works, so here we see for, and kind of like before, we're taking two items, so making a range of both. So again, it's going to iterate through A and through a range of 3. So again, the letter is the first variable, which represents the list of A or B, or A then B. And then there's a variable number that represents a range up to 3, so 0, 1, 2. Okay, and then again, it's just going to create a list of letter number. So again, the first time it iterates, it's A0, then A1, then A2, then B0, then B1, B2. So it works pretty much just basically like the dosec did. Just, again, it lists them all on the same line instead of on separate lines. So I'll leave it at that. Again, there's much more to learn for all the sirens in the background. I do live in Brooklyn, where there are constantly sirens. And but basically that's Clojure. Okay, I mean there's a lot more functions, a lot more things you can do with Clojure, but this should give you the tools for you to go back, read the documentation, and learn more. So I'll see you guys in the next video on whatever we decide to learn.